Fred has been a huge supporter of Creative Mornings, and I asked his partner David how he would describe Fred. I did last night. He was probably sitting next to you. And he said, Fred is one of the smartest and most human, kindest people he knows. And I said, I would totally sign that. So Fred, thank you. Thank you and your team for doing this for us. And what you're experiencing right now is called Creative Tensions and is a collaboration that Fred and Addio has done with the Sundance Institute Theater Program. So also thank you for Sundance being here. And let's get this going.
So I'm going to invite Christopher Hibma from Sundance Institute to the stage for a moment. And I do have to say that if my husband said that last night, then he's being really nice, because I was in the worst mood ever. But it's a great morning, and I'm happy to be here. So I want to just take a moment, and I thought we would talk about how this came about, because the reality is this has been a pretty deep collaboration with Sundance Institute. And I think that as we were working on this idea, the notion was that we both agreed that we wanted to think about how we kind of expose the notion of creativity across many, many, many kinds of work and professions. So the idea is that it's like your creativity just doesn't live with you if you call yourself a creative, that there's a lot of other things that actually can become kind of creative expressions or moments of creativity. I'll just kind of give my side, and then I'd love to hear. So we were sitting in a room, and we're like, let's imagine an event. And whenever IDEO does events, everyone's like really bummed if it's just a panel discussion. And so we were like, well, what if we got people who are like extreme analogs? So someone who's obviously a creative, and someone who you might not call a creative, but is using creativity in what they do. And so we were like, we brought that to the table, and then you guys had another side. Do you want to talk about your side?
Sure. You might be surprised to learn that Sundance has a theater program, actually. We're probably most well known for the Sundance Film Festival that happens every January. But we are really committed as an institution to storytelling. And when we became familiar with IDEO's work, I think that we share that passion for the individual's expression of their own personal journeys through storytelling. And in the theater, we have this game that we play when we are in drama school that's called Values Clarification. And it's an opportunity, it's one of many different exercises that one does in order to get to the root of a particular situation, to the root of a character, to just find some clarification in whatever creative process is happening on the stage. And so we shared this idea with IDEO, and they were like, hey, that sounds really fun. Let's do something together in space that is not this typical panel thing with the audience sitting passively in seats and two panelists up on the stage. Or let's smush it all together and see if we can create a theatrical event centered around design.
Yep. So that's what we're about to do. It's a mashup, and we were talking about this morning, and we're like, oh, we have so much kind of history around this. This is our third one. So, and it's, by the way, our first one that wasn't where everybody was having cocktails and everyone's on caffeine. So we're a little bit worried about how this could end up. So actually, I'm quite worried. So first, to even make it more difficult, can everybody please come into the pink box? And we're gonna run a practice line. And actually, when this came up as a concept, Christopher's colleague Philip threw out an example, and the example was creative tension or attention. You are, what is it?
Corduroy.
Corduroy or silk. So can we get the tension up there? Corduroy or silk. So can we have the whole room organized by on this spectrum? Who's corduroy, who's silk? So corduroy on this side, silk on this side, everybody move.
And the green line is the center here.
And I'm way over there on the corduroy side. All right, 10 more seconds, 5 more seconds. All right, so So if that was hard, it's going to get a lot harder, I just have to tell you. So I just want to talk about this, which is what we want you to do over the next kind of 45 minutes as we actually bring our provocateurs up here to basically talk about the theme of action, which I'll talk about in a second, is continually, as we throw out tensions, have you move along this spectrum. So as you see them and as you hear the question, you answer as well based on the spectrums that are up here. And as you hear your speakers talk about how they think about it, if they convince you that maybe you should be moving in a different direction, move closer to them. And speakers as well feel confident to do that. So I'll introduce them in a moment. So I want to talk about the theme and why we particularly wanted to do something around action. So many of us are in the design profession or in creative professions, and I wake up most mornings as a designer feeling like what I need to do is actually use optimism to think about how I make the world into a better place. That's actually the role of me and design. I'll tell you that actually in the last 2 years, I haven't woken up every morning feeling optimistic. I've woken up and read the paper, and depending on how it was, or whether I had an Uber car accident or whatever, feeling more anger or frustration or sadness. And so one of the things that we've been looking at more recently at IDEO is how do those become real things to design from as well? How can we not just think of design as something that has to be optimistic and about joy, but actually how can we think about creative action that comes out of pain or comes out of anger? How can we design for people who are in pain or in anger? And so what we really believe is that actually these deep feelings lead to specific actions, which is why we wanted to do this topic. We wanted to bring two people to the stage to kind of talk about the notion of the way they think about action and have you reflect personally about what personal emotions, personal things drive you to action. I'm not gonna lie, we have a specific goal here, which is that everybody leaves the room an activist. That's the way it goes. So it's like, we'll see how it works. And that's what we're gonna kind of aim for. So I'm up here, I'm sort of the director, which is awesome. So that means I don't have to answer any questions and just tell everybody what to do. And I'm gonna bring up Lisa and Perviz. Where are you guys? Here we are. So,
coming from far corduroy.
Yeah, there you far corduroy. And take a mic. Deep corduroy. All right, so I'm gonna let them introduce themselves, but before I do that, I'm gonna do the next spectrum or the next tension, and that tension is artist or activist. So please refigure, you guys reconfigure. And that's it, you're like, I'm here. Yeah. Oh, wow, okay. So you guys are defining the ends of this tension. So I like want to applaud that. Yes. All right. So would you mind, Lisa, introducing yourself really quickly and talking about why you're an artist?
Sure. I make theater. I'm a director and a writer. I've fell in love with theater when I was a little kid. I call myself a theater geek. In my spare time, I go to see plays. It's really goofy. But I'm a director, so I spend time working with writers. I do a lot of new plays. I do a lot of old plays. That's more when I get to do what I want by myself. But a lot of what I do is in partnership with writers, actors, designers.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Can I ask you to introduce yourself and talk about what you do and why you're an activist?
So my name is Purvi Shah. I'm a civil and human rights lawyer. I work at the Center for Constitutional Rights, which is based here in New York. And I say we do three things. We're currently suing the Pope, the President, and the NYPD. So it gives you a sense of a little bit of what I like to do. I also Lisa says she's a theater geek. I call myself a rabble rouser. I really believe in sort of the importance of taking action for justice, for social justice. So I've been doing this for probably as long as I can remember, and work primarily around, currently in the Black Lives Matter movement, helping build the Ferguson Legal Defense Committee, the Baltimore Legal Defense Committee, really organizing lawyers to play a role in the current movement and moment.
Great, thank you. All right. So that's about as easy as it's going to get. Now we're going to go into the more difficult questions. So what I'm going to do, Lisa and Purvi, I'm going to ask you a specific tension. I'm going to have you guys reorganize. I want you guys to reorganize. And then whoever feels like it, kind of begin to speak to the topic and why you've organized your way. So I have to admit, I just was telling somebody I got old over the summer, so glasses. It was weird. I didn't expect it. I was like, not me. So the first question for you guys is, as you look at your work and the things that you do and the scale of the things you want to impact, if it's safe, it's not action. Can you tell, agree, which is over here, or disagree? If it's safe, it's not action. And then likewise, oh, and guess what? I don't have to clarify the question. The whole point is for you, which is awesome. The whole point is for you to reflect on it and think about what that means. So if it's safe, it's not action. Agree, disagree. Everyone move.
Oh, okay.
If it's safe, it's not action.
Thank you.
Interesting. All right, so we have a lot of people in over here in disagree. We have somebody right in the middle. So let's start with you, Lisa.
I'm still thinking about it.
Oh, okay.
But no. But I think I actually think there probably are, like, I probably spend 70% of my time committing safe actions. But I still would think of them as actions.
Interesting.
Like, I actually just think like putting on your clothes and getting out the door in the morning. I mean, truly, I often think, how do I do it? Like, I'm not a child anymore, and I'm really not a child anymore, but it still amazes me that I can get myself somewhere by myself. So that's probably pretty safe, but I still think it's an action.
So I see you coming closer. Does that you're like actually?
No, I think I was thinking about it myself, and then I kind of changed my mind for 2 reasons. So I would say I actually feel like I'm right in the middle for 2 reasons. One, I think I agree with it to the extent that I think sometimes challenging the status quo requires letting go of safety. And so that to me feels like a pretty critical thing. If we're talking about any type of change, the kind of work that I do, you really have to be willing to be uncomfortable, to be unsafe in some ways. But I think there are so many people in our world that have to act constantly while not feeling safe. Right? So if we look at the Black Lives Matter, we look at police violence and what's happening in Black and brown communities, people have to every day get up and go to work or let their kids go out their homes and walk to school even if they're afraid. So I think in some ways, you have to take action even though sometimes it may not be safe.
That's really interesting. And then Lisa, I saw you go all the way out there. So
yeah, because listening to Purve, I was thinking, actually, if we're going to value action in a positive way, which I do also, you said we all want to become activists. I definitely want to become an activist. It's like sort of what I aspire to in the theater. So if we value it highly, then I think it is true that you can't be safe and take a capital A action, like an action that will actually impact the world. I think you actually have to, you have to face something that seems scary. Like my example that popped into my head was, I'm directing a play right now. Yesterday, in collaboration with an actor, we decided that nudity was essential, but that I had to propose it, and then he had to suddenly go, I'm going to try it tonight with no rehearsal. And then I was so excited to watch.
Wow.
So that would be not safe action in the theater.
That's awesome. So it sounds, it's a tremendous kind of personal context and actually the moment that actually allows you to kind of understand how you define this. Interesting. You just keep staying there. Is that because you're like, I'm not going to move? No, you're still corduroy, actually. Okay. If you felt like it. Okay, I just want to make sure that I wasn't like, being unclear. Next one. I prefer to plan or improvise. Plans over there, improvise over here. Yeah, you're like corduroy, you're full on improvise. So we got, so I'm gonna start, you know what, I want to start with you. Can we give her a mic for a moment?
Yeah,
so like, somebody, okay, cool, it's like, oh, can you? It's like perfect. Wait, we have a mic for you, sorry. So you were way out there on plan. Like you were the planner. Can you talk about it for a second?
I have a big voice, so.
But, yeah, you do, go.
Right. I have a window that says that's where success is. Make a plan, work the plan. When that fails, make a plan, work the plan. Always be successful.
Anyone else go with her? That's awesome. Make a plan, work the plan. Anyone want to move? Oh, there's a kid now crawling way, way out there. So it's like, So Lisa, you're the next. You're pretty far out there. Can you talk about what the?
Yeah, I'm supposed to like improvisation because I'm in the theater, but I hate improvisation. But I do actually have to like. I also aspire to improvise, but I'm a director, so I'm always thinking about a calendar in my head.
Great.
Always.
Harvey?
So Arthur Kanoy, who was one of the great people's lawyers in the 1960s, said something. To be a people's lawyer, you have to know how to dance. And for me, that was something that's really resonated with me. I'm definitely about a plan. I believe in strategy. More than planning, I believe in strategy, right? And the idea that purposeful action, assessing the situation, making a purposeful plan based on an analysis of what's happening. So if you're talking about changing the world, I mean, that's a very ambitious thing. If you're talking about changing police violence, I mean, you've got to have an analysis of why are those things happening and what do I do about it. That being said, though, I do really think that you cannot linearly make your way to change. That it is something that requires a feeling the pulse of the world, of an ability to shift and pivot in moments. And so my sense is I'm a planner, but I like to do that so that when the moment when the moment requires me to pivot or to be improvisational, I'm actually able to do that.
Right. So you can actually plan to accept improvisation. Sally, you're right in the middle. Why?
I'm actually not in the middle.
Oh, okay.
I'm in the middle and one step towards improvising.
Okay.
So I chose the middle because I think I'm an equal planner and improviser, but I definitely sway towards improvising because I never, ever want to, let go of a new idea or a different way of doing something or chaos or a happy accident that I didn't plan for. So that's why I'm
to be open
one step to the right.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I want to just kind of reflect on something. So everybody started out over here. Now everybody's moved over here. And then Lisa, you've moved over there. So do you want to talk about that? So,
I was thinking about the calendar differently all of a sudden. Because I do make a long plan, but actually on a daily basis, I'm not a director who likes to plan out, say, the staging. So the pleasure that I get from doing theater is that I arrive, I have bodies in front of me, I have a story, but I don't actually have a plan, I realize. I would like to watch you guys move around in front of me, and then I'll sort of grab the things that are interesting. So in fact, the work I do is much more improvisation than planning.
So it's really kind of what you were saying, which is like hold the space open for improv. Does anyone want to reconsider where they land based on this before we go on to, yeah, we got some people moving over to, you're like, that's it. All corduroy and improv. So it's like, all right. Ready for the next one? Cool. So I want you to really stop and think about this because it feels at first, I think, like a very easy thing to answer. But the most powerful actions are taken on behalf of oneself or others. Everybody organize around that, please. The most powerful actions are taken for oneself or for others. Interesting. So a sort of strong weighting over here. So I'm going to come back here for a moment. I'm going to go to you, Parvi, and talk about oneself.
Well, I think for me this comes down to kind of what is my sort of philosophy of social change work is that it's actually about collective liberation. And so in some ways, let me explain what that means. Like in the sense that we oftentimes can have like a more paternalistic understanding of change, like meaning charity. I'm going to do something for someone else. And I think what's been really the driving engine for me in my work is a sense of my own freedom is very much tied up in the freedom of other people, and that unless we all get free, I don't get free. And ultimately, I think that even though that to me isn't about a sort of egotistical or self-centered version of action, I do think the sort of collectivism and the idea that my sort of fate is tied up with the fates of other people is oftentimes what motivates me to take action.
Okay, that's great. So I'm just going to go back to behind you again. So you make plans, and you're on the oneself.
It was really hard to stand over here, and so I'll just say the title of my book is For the Sake of My Sanity, One Woman's Journey of Speaking Truth to Power in Ignorance. And my story is based on the idea the moment that I decided that I would not allow anything in my life that did not allow me to love myself fully, that is when I became very powerful. And that is what I'm using to actually be a change agent in the world. Because every time I say that I don't allow you to disrespect me, to not love me, to not treat me well, then that's when I'm powerful. And it's really hard to stay there because it's easier to say I'm doing this for you. That's acceptable. It's not easy to say I'm doing this for me. Unless we get to the point where each person says I'm doing this for me, you can't do it for others. You can't do anything for someone else that you don't care enough about yourself to do for yourself.
Thank you. Anyone want to move? Lisa.
I do think, in the theater biz, I feel like we are always imagining an audience. And that's kind of a beautiful thing, because we don't always know who is going to be listening to the story, but our collaborators are that's our main collaboration, with an audience. And I can't imagine the theater would be that kind of art would be so uninteresting if it was only inward focused and not that, and if it didn't imagine a dialogue. So that's why I have to be on this side.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It actually really looks at like it's the frame of the impact of where you are is actually really kind of sets up this kind of tension. Anyone want to move based on this? I finally saw Corduroy move. So you decided oneself, actually. Okay, good. I'm glad to see that. So we're going to go on to the next thing, and this is going to be, we might want to move the cameras and the stuff forward. The idea, this is actually what we call a lightning round. And the faster you do this, the better, and we're not going to talk about what we actually think about it. So ready? Let me see what this one is. Lightning round. Lightning round. Eating or sleeping? All right. I'm like way over here with you guys, like as far over here as I can get. All right, great. I was saying I'm like over there in the far corner if I can be. We're going again. Super speed, super strength. Super strength over here, super speed over there. We got a lot of speedy people. I think it's the caffeine, actually. It's that's doing it. Wow, that's great. Okay, all of you, you're hired. It's like that's what we need. Last lightning round. Car chase, card game. Card game over here, card chase over there. Everyone's sort of in between. There's time for a good card chase, time for a good card game. We like the combo. All right, going back to Lisa and, wait, where's Lisa? Did I lose her? Oh, there you are, sorry. Okay. It's weird how it's like, you lose it. So what's more important? The action or the objective? What's more important? The act itself or the goal you're setting, the action or the objective? Action is over there, objective is over here. There we go. I'm right here. Let's hear from you. Objective.
I guess I'm over here because I think intentional action is really important and key, particularly in this moment. There can be a lot of sort of moving and doing, and I think I'm really trying to I'm trying to shift myself very particularly towards being purposeful in action. And the reason why I'm not all the way over there is that, there can be a lot of thinking and ideas. and without actually putting them into action, I don't really, you know, the kind of, like, there's no way we can actually move our society forward. So,
yay, get a picture of that. It's important. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's about purposeful action.
These are the two words I use in my work the most. What's your action? What's your objective with an actor? And I absolutely, changing one's objective is the deepest way you can change a scene. I mean, you can change actions, and that matters a lot, but if you change an objective that a character has, that's like earth-shattering. So, but I moved over a little bit closer to you because you're right. If you can just, even in a scene, you could sit around thinking about what you want to do, but if you can't find the right way to actually act on that, then it's not going to be very interesting to watch.
So you brought like one or two people over to this side. I watched you move from over there to over here. Do you want to talk about, can someone get a mic from, sorry, here you go. Do you want to talk about what made you move over here? I'm curious.
I like what she was saying about when you have an objective, it changes, has lasting effects.
Yeah. And the depth of thinking. Let's take somebody who's like far out there on the action side. So who wants to raise their hand? Who's on action? Who knows why they're there? Talk about it. So let's hear about it.
A lot of times I don't know what my objective is, and I figure that through action I'll discover it, and I like that openness.
Awesome. Talk to Lisa. She'll help you with your objective. She's here to do counseling afterwards, so if you need it. So what's worse? This is for you too. What's worse? Inaction or unknown consequences? What's worse, inaction or unknown consequences? So inaction's over there, unknown consequences over here. Whoa. All right. Ella, let's talk for a second. So unknown consequences. Let's hear about it.
Well, I'm actually doing an online IDEO course right now, and one of the examples that really stood out to me was mosquito nets in Africa and how they've been so effective, but one of the unknown consequences of them was that because in some country they gave them away for free to pregnant women and women with children under 6 or something, and because there's so many free mosquito nets, no one is selling them for anyone else to get. So anyone who's not in those two groups just has no access to mosquito nets. So it's this thing that was very well intended, and it came out of action, but then there are all these other people who now don't have access to mosquito nets.
And Ella just found a friend. Awesome. So well done, Ella. That's great. Let's find our protagonist. Hi. All right, let's go.
So I went out to Ferguson about a couple days after Mike Brown was killed, and I think one of the things that I learned from the people of Ferguson was the importance of taking action. I mean, they were out on the streets lamenting the loss of one of their children, which sparked an entire movement across this country. I think after November, there were 140 protests happening simultaneously in different parts of the country. So for me, I think unknown consequences is sort of part of the magic of what it is that is how social change happens. And so, yeah, I'm all the way over here because I don't think we can ever know. It's this sort of alchemy of things that come together that lead to unknown advancements in our society. So I think it's even though it's purposeful action, I think that I would rather take acting over being afraid of unknown consequences.
I totally agree. I would be in the corner too, but my mic doesn't reach. But because that's what you want. I mean, in the theater, as a director, you try to put objectives and actions in motion against each other. You're curious. You have to be curious about the unknown circumstances. That's what you're looking for. So without a desire for them, actually like a hunger for unknown circumstances, that's what keeps theater interesting. And even though ultimately we're all about repetition, we do the same thing over and over and over again nightly, but we who do it know that the sweet spot is that though you are repeating yourself, it's never the same. It's just always different, and that's the magic. That's what you want, is the unknown.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because the way you're talking about it, it's like the action is kind of an iteration towards this kind of making sure you know what the consequences are, in a sense. So it's a way of kind of moving forward in a slow way, I think. Ella, you want to stay where you are? Okay, Ella's sticking. Sorry, actually, and she's got a lot more friends here, so it's like it's a good thing. Dean, you're staying here as well. Cool. You want to talk about it at all? Yeah, sure. Let's get him a mic. Because you got convinced over here, right?
Thanks for that, by the way. I mean, there's a lot of examples that Ella's little story called to mind, and one of them was like when we went to war with Afghanistan after 9/11. I think we cause a lot of problems by action and anticipation of knowing the consequences, when in reality we can't know the consequences. Even if we think they're noble and good, it's all relative to ourselves. So that's why.
Yeah. Dean, that's a great comment. I'd love to hear from one of our commentators on that. Like, it's like, so what about that? So like, what happens when we make drastic, big, active decisions that potentially take us awry?
I mean, I guess for me it would be like, then what's the counteraction, right? I think that often, I think that is being willing to have the humility to understand when our actions didn't have the intended consequence that we desired, is to then have the humility to be able to pivot to a different action. Because I think that even to me also that moment of recognition, that moment of awareness, is actually an action as well. That's something intentional that we have to do.
But it is true that, like right now, this morning, we're kind of valuing action as a positive thing, but it isn't always. Mm-hmm. You're right. There can be really, yes, I'm coming.
She's coming over to join you guys. A little bit, not all the way, maybe.
No, I mean, there's no way. I mean, sometimes people take actions that are hugely destructive. Not in the theater, because when we're rehearsing, all action is good action, but in the world and in life, it's not necessarily.
So I brought her over a little closer to you guys, so that it's like, this is the last big question, and then we're going to do one more lightning round. And again, this is it's one I'd like to get to think about before you actually respond. So before you move, when you think about action in your own life, what motivates you? Is it fear of loss or hope of gain? Fear of loss is over there, hope of gain over here. Wow. And it's funny, if you watch, you kind of moseyed yourself further over here. So it's pretty interesting. We're going to come to you guys in a moment. So, Lisa, you're furthest out on this one. Hope of gain.
Right now, I can't think of an action I took in my life from fear of loss, but I think because I do a lot of pitching of projects and ideas, because that's how I can get things done. So that would always be a hope of gain. Maybe while someone else is talking, I'll think of an example of working from fear of loss, but I actually haven't thought of one yet.
Okay, that's great. I mean, hold on to it. Purdy?
I think for me, I think fear can be a motivator, but it peters out. And so for me, I found optimism, a belief in humanism, a belief in the possibility of what our world could be, is the thing that sustains me when the stakes are high, when there are actual real consequences for speaking out about things, whether they're professional or personal, whether you lose relationships. The aspiration to something greater than what we have is what sustained me. And I think it's also about, I guess it's fear of loss doesn't motivate me, but I guess there is a belief that sacrifice is a piece of, like, if we're all going to just sort of stay exactly how we are, then, and we're all going to want to keep everything we have, then we're not going to actually get to a place of more equality. So for me, I guess the fear doesn't motivate me, but it's just factored in. It's sort of a sense of willingness to sacrifice something just being a piece of what it is.
So loss is part of gain, perhaps.
Loss is part of it.
Yeah, but while you talked long enough that Lisa actually wandered over there. So do you want to? Did you think of an example?
I think so. Yeah. Just the other day, the theater community suffered a loss, and one of our friends took his own life, and I found myself reaching out and taking action, mostly because out of like an empathetic response that had to do with fear of loss. That is to say, I wanted to make sure I didn't lose any more friends.
Right.
I wanted to make sure that my friends were okay. And that was definitely, just personally, an example of acting out of fear of loss.
Yeah, that connects to a lot of things we talked about before. I'm going to take someone from over there who's in the far, the woman in blue. I'm sorry, I can't see your name tag. Yeah. Do you mind talking about this at all?
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I think fear and loss oftentimes have a really negative connotation. And I think that loss and letting go and being able to act from that space of like really being afraid of letting go, like being afraid of like letting go of something that's not serving you, letting go of a relationship that you're in but having to, separate from. Those things can be scary, but the gain at the end of them is much different. So it's going in with... It stopped. Oh, there you go. Okay, it's going in with the intention and the acknowledgement of like fear sometimes being a healthy thing and being something that you really need to recognize so that you can get to that next space.
So I saw you move over, and I felt like what she was saying was embedded in some of the things you were saying before. Do you want to kind of continue on for a moment?
No, I mean, I think that's really right. I think I just really resonated with me, this idea of letting go being a really powerful tool towards sometimes different action. And so, yeah, that's why I moved over. I was like, it's not, and hope sometimes can be a little false, right? And so I don't think it's like the blinding optimism. I think it's a more balanced place of sort of, what is possible with sort of what is reality.
I don't think letting go is ever not scary. Like, it's always going to be scary. Like, whether it's like, jumping off into a dive, into a pool and letting go of the ground, or, trying something new, like, there will be that fear element. And I think how you get through that is really, incredibly important in your action.
You're pulling some people over there, actually. It's like, I'm seeing a lot of people line up on this middle line, actually. So, I mean, it's a pretty compelling conversation around the fact that these two things kind of come together. But we still have a lot of people over here. So I want to stop for a moment and just thank you all for participating in this experiment. I want to thank Parvi and Lisa for being so willing to do this. Hold on, we're not done. Literally. And please, grab them and talk to them. There's a wealth of experience. Some of the things I've been hearing about them from this morning is incredible. But I'm going to ask you one last question. It's a lightning round. After this, I'm going to act or work. After this, I'm going to act or to work. Go. And thank you very much. Redivide. Let's see. Oh, yeah.
I think I might this might be the one where I straddle right in the middle.
What? That is exactly where I wanted to see everybody. Thank you. Good. Squeeze in. They're the same thing, right? Awesome. I'm going to have Christopher just do a last quick thing.
Yeah, so just today we're excited to announce the launch of the Creative Tensions website. So if you go on to creativetensions.com, you'll see all of the past Creative Tensions that we've done, as well as you can sign up for future ones that we're going to be planning. And from there you can link out to both IDEO's website and Sundance's website and learn more about our institutions.
So thank you, Christopher. Tina, thank you so much for hosting us this morning. We really appreciate it.
And live stream.
Thank you, too. I really appreciate it. Have a great morning. Bye.